Those of you who are watching from afar, if it seems a little hazy in the room, like dust is floating through the room, that's because it is. Because today we began construction on Shenresi Hall. And there were 2 cats out in front of Ananda Hall, buzzing and beeping all afternoon. And we have piles of dirt all over. And that's why some specks of it floating in the room. So we're very happy about this. Okay, so before we get into tonight's thing, I want to talk a little bit about how to listen to teachings. Okay, because it's very important when we listen to teachings. You know, there's the simile of the 3 pots, you know, the one that is upside down, so nothing that goes in. The one that's right side up, but it has a hole in the bottom, so everything goes in and comes out. And then the one that is dirty in the inside, so things go in and get polluted. So, you know, we know that analogy, that the one with the hole in the bottom is when we aren't listening. The one with the upside down one is we aren't listening. The hole in the bottom is we're listening, but we're not retaining anything. And the one with the dirt in the middle is when we have a wrong motivation. Okay? I think there maybe we need a 4th one, which is the pot with popcorn popping out of it. Okay? So that might be the analogy of listening to the teachings without being so mindful of our behavior, and just the popping, you know, one question after another question after another question after another question, without thinking about what we're hearing. You know, because I think it's very important to think about what we're hearing, to ask questions in a respectful way. When someone says they don't know, then don't ask the same question again. And also to have a pleasant expression on one's face and not go when you think that the teacher isn't making any sense. Instead think, you know, I'm not understanding anything, you know, or, you know, I don't understand, but going, is, you know, it's, yeah, you wonder kind of who you're teaching, you know. Yeah. Similarly, when you're listening to teachings, don't sit with your leg, you know, if you're in a chair with your leg bouncing up and down like this and twitching and everything, but you know, try and be mindful of your posture. Okay? And so with all these teachings, the idea is to listen and then to go back and think about them and to do some additional research ourselves. Yeah, it is not the teacher's responsibility to answer all of our questions. Repeat. It is not the teacher's responsibility to answer all of our questions. It is our responsibility to do research on the things that we don't understand and to discuss with our fellow Dharma students. And through the process of discussion, then we gain some clarity. And sometimes the clarity is that we don't understand it, and then we can ask, you know, a question for more information. But to really try and use our own intelligence and discuss things. This is why in the Tibetan monasteries they do debate. Yeah, the teacher says a little bit, then they all go off and for hours discuss what was taught in class. So you should all be discussing these things, you know, with each other and looking up in other books and so forth for more material, and trying to come to some understanding yourself and sharing your understanding with each other, and then you can also bring things back to class and, you know, fill in things, or, you know, say what you learned or ask a question for clarification. Okay? So today I want to reiterate, you know, why I was going through this the sheet that you have about the divisions of the selfless and the types of phenomena. The purpose is not to go into the details of what every single specific thing is, because if that were the purpose, then I would be teaching the whole mind and mental factors course right now. So that is not the purpose. The purpose of this was to give you some idea about the types of phenomena and how in our tradition there's a schema and how you think of the different kinds of phenomena, because it's this schema that helps you when you try and analyze to understand what the person is. Yeah, so you're looking at all these other different phenomena to see, you know, what, you know, are they parts of the person? Are they causes of the person? How does the person exist in relationship to these things? And so it's very helpful in our understanding in order to deconstruct our very solid notion of what the self is. Okay? You know, if we were doing everything in great depth, we would be taking quite a bit of time. My motivation was just to give you the outline and then to go more and talk about the different kinds of cognizers and the different kinds of objects. Okay? And to do that as a preparation for studying some of the different tenet systems. Okay? Knowing that the different tenet systems also have different ways of presenting phenomena and the various types of cognizers and so on. But just to give you, you know, an overview of one of the most common ways. So that's the purpose in this. Okay? So when we were talking about the divisions of the selfless, then under that there are the non-existence and the existence. Okay? So the non-existence are things that, you know, the rabbit's horn, the turtle's mustache, the self-sufficient, substantially existent person, the inherently existent aggregates, and so on. Okay? A question came up about last week. I was saying that, you know, for debating's sake, okay, they say that a rabbit's horn is empty of true existence, because if you say, is a rabbit's horn truly existent, the answer is no. Well, if it's not truly existent, it must be empty of true existence, okay? However, that's not an actual kind of emptiness, because when we talk about emptiness, there has to be an existent phenomena, yeah, something that exists conventionally, and its ultimate nature is empty. Okay? So that's what we were talking about there. Okay? Non-existent things, we don't say non-existent phenomena, because phenomena is a word that's synonymous with existent. Okay, so just non-existence. And we can make up plenty of them. Okay, in fact, we're usually making them up quite a bit, you know. Our discussion this afternoon, the wonderful supercallogistic expialidocious person we fall in love with is a non-existent. Okay? The conventionally existent person who is cycling in samsara due to afflictions, that person is existent. But the one that we're perceiving, you know, that we're painting them to be is actually non-existent. Okay, so you see, it's problematic to believe that non-existent things exist. Yeah, and we have a great resistance to being told that we're believing in non-existent things. We don't like when people tell us that. Yeah, I mean, even when somebody says things aren't truly existent, we get very upset sometimes. Yeah, so yeah, that's all a function of ignorance. Then within existent things, existence, or phenomena, or knowledge objects, there's many words that are synonymous, and their definitions are basically quite similar. It's basically something that's perceivable by mind. Then there's two, the permanent and the impermanent. So the permanent phenomena are those that don't change moment by moment. Yeah, the impermanent ones are the ones that change moment by moment. And changing moment by moment means that what we were talking about before, it arises, abides, and ceases all at the same time. So it doesn't arise, be static for a while, and then cease again. And it doesn't need another cause to come in and make it cease, but just the fact that it's produced by causes, and those causes themselves don't last more than, this infinitesimal time that we can't actually find. That alone indicates that the result is also going to be transient in that same way. So with the permanent phenomena, there's two kinds. There's the occasional permanence. So those are things that exist for a while and then cease to exist, like the emptiness of the cup, or the emptiness of Tupten children, because those things, the basis that, the conventional phenomena that are the basis of those emptinesses, don't have a lasting continuity, so the emptiness doesn't last. Then there's other things, like the non-occasional permanence would just be like emptiness in general. Okay, because emptiness is always there, and emptiness doesn't change moment to moment. Okay, then the second division of impermanent phenomena, that is actually synonymous with what we call thing, or sometimes functioning thing, or product. In other words, things that are produced by causes and conditions. Permanent things are not produced by causes and conditions, because if they were, they wouldn't be permanent. Okay, so only impermanent things are produced by causes and conditions. And product and impermanent and functioning thing are all synonymous. Okay, and we say these things function because they produce results. Yeah, they function in that way. Okay, so within things or functioning things, yeah, there's three main categories. One is form. Yeah, and the second is consciousness, and the third is abstract composites. So those are the three main subdivisions of things. When we talk about forms, yeah, we have the forms that are for our five senses. So the colors and shape that the eye perceives. Although some people say the eyes only perceive color, because shape is perceived because you perceive color. Yeah. So color, and then sound, and odor, and taste, and then tangible things are anything, rough, smooth, heavy, soft, hunger, thirst, all the physical sensations of the body, sexual energy and so on, or tactile sensations, all those are from the body sense, okay? And then with our mind, the mental sense, then there are certain kind of forms that appear to that mental sense, and they are called forms, okay? They are undemonstrable, so you can't point to them or show them, and they're non-obstructive. Okay? So they are defined as form aggregates which are objects of only the mental consciousness. Okay, and thus are not classed as form sources, but as phenomena sources. So that's getting into when we talk about the 12 sources. Okay, so there's different kinds of these mental ones. We talked about the form arising from aggregation, which there is referring to the smallest particle of earth, water, fire, air, all these colors. Not colors, but different properties of things. So those, because a single particle can't be seen by our eye consciousness. It has form, yeah, but can't be seen. It's hard to delineate what it is. Then there's the thing of the space forms that is some kind of bluish. There's the space that appears to the eye consciousness, and then there's also some kind of space that appears to the mental consciousness. Okay. Then there's the forms that arises from vows or from promises. Like when you take the pratimoksha vow, you get some kind of imperceptible form that arises from, the perceptible form of your kneeling and then reciting the words and so on and so forth. And that's said to act like a dam to prevent you from creating non-virtues. I don't understand how it works. Then there's the category of imaginary forms, which are dream objects or non-actual objects of meditation. Okay, so dream objects, there's a variety of different opinions about what dream objects are. Okay. So he's saying here a dream object is an external object affecting a mental consciousness, just as a reflection in a mirror is an external object affecting the eye consciousness. Okay, by external object, what it means is not that the dream object is out there, but it means that it's not the mind. Okay, it's not the nature of the mind. Okay, and so you have, the Chittamadras say the dream object actually is the nature of the mind, and the Prasangikas say no, it's not. And so there's a lot of different assertions about these kinds of things. It's interesting, the Prasangikas say that reflections of the falling hairs seen by one with vitreous floaters, okay, and mirages, that they're visible forms just as echoes are sounds. Okay? Yeah, because they're perceived by the eye consciousness, so those are visible forms. So these imaginary forms are different. They're like the dreams. Or I think what this would include here, this is my idea, when it says non-actual objects of meditation, when we visualize the Buddha, okay? When those of us without any kind of samadhi, we visualize the Buddha, we have the image, we deliberately create the image of the Buddha in our mind. Yeah. Now the question comes up, well then what's the difference between that and thinking about the Buddha, which would be a conceptual appearance, which is permanent, appearing to the mind. So just in my own thinking, and this we have to explore, but maybe you can check it yourself. I thought, well, what's the difference when I sit and I'm thinking about the Buddha, what's appearing to my mind when I'm thinking about the Buddha, versus when I sit there and I deliberately create an image, a mental image of the Buddha in my mind. Yeah? So there's some difference. There's some difference there. Yeah, so that's why I'm thinking that the images that we create would fit in here. He gave the example of corpses filling the world. They appear as if they were actual forms, but are not. Thus they are classed as imaginary forms. Because sometimes when you're doing mindfulness of the body, then you visualize, you know, the whole space filled with corpses. They're actually, you know, they're not real corpses, yeah, and you don't have samadhi focused on them, but there's something you're creating for a specific purpose. So perhaps, you know, when we're deliberately sitting and visualizing the Buddha, it falls in that same category. Then there's another kind of form for the mental consciousness, which is forms for one with meditative power. Okay, so this is a kind of form for somebody who has attained various levels of the jhana. Okay, so mastery in meditation. And these are objects of meditation that in fact exist. So let me read what Jeffrey says here. Well, let me give you some examples first, okay? They say that, like, for somebody who has done the meditation where you imagine the whole universe filled with bones, and they have samadhi on that the bones that are appearing to them are this kind of form for one with meditative power. Okay? So it's different then than just when you're visualizing it, because here you have samadhi, so your mind is really creating something, creating some kind of form with the samadhi. So mere earth or mere water as a meditative manifestation of one who has attained mastery in meditation is actual and is not an imaginary form. Okay, so somebody who has this kind of samadhi, who creates earth or water, that's an actual form, it's not an imaginary form. His Holiness said, the fire and water produced by samadhi aren't real fire and water because they're produced in dependence on samadhi only. But they can perform the function of burning and making things wet.
Oh my goodness.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. There's one story of, you know, at the time of the Buddha, there was one woman who invited the Sangha to come for lunch, and they were all, you know, in different places, and so the ones with meditative powers, they flew there, and some had fire coming out of their bodies, and some had water coming out of their bodies, and I don't know, but apparently it's possible. Okay, I've never seen it. But then, on the other hand, it says, included, because it said, mere earth or mere water as a meditative manifestation of one who has attained mastery in meditation is actual and is not an imaginary form. Okay, so the imaginary forms were the preceding ones, so this one is the actual one. Included in this category are objects of meditative manifestation that can be shown to another being's eye consciousness. Okay, you had, you know, you have certain sages that can create objects. You know, Sai Baba had that, you know, kind of create things, or what?
There was that one person in India who could make the dust come out of his hand.
Make the,
Sai Baba?
yeah.
Dust or something come out of his hand.
Yeah, they can make dust, they can manifest watches, they can, you know, do all sorts of things. Okay? Okay, so these are manifestations that can be shown to another being's eye consciousness, but this does not make the object as it appears to the master a visible form. You know, if somebody does this and creates something, other people see it with their eye consciousness, but for the master who created it, it's not a visible form. For him, it's still a form for the mental consciousness. Okay, because it's created by the power of the samadhi. This is compared to the varieties of externally existent objects seen by different types of beings, as in the case of a god seeing a bowl of fluid as ambrosia, and a hungry ghost seeing pus and blood in the same place. Okay, so the idea is, the reason it's compared is that for the master who's created it, it's a form for the mental consciousness. For the person who's seeing it, it is an actual form. Just as for the God, it is ambrosia. For a preta, it's pus and blood. Okay, so those are the different kinds of forms. Yeah. And I think it's kind of interesting for us to see how addicted we are to these different kinds of forms. You know, our whole life is so preoccupied with objects of the senses. You know, we're always, you know, the moment we wake up, we're seeing, we're hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. We're always looking for, you know, and thinking about all these external things that we're coming in contact with. You know, our whole energy is directed outwards towards these external things. And then, of course, you know, at nighttime we dream. Those are internal things, but of course they're influenced by what we experience externally. Yeah, and so always having our senses so active like this produces a lot of confusion in our mind because we're ignorant. You know, we have the ignorance that doesn't understand the nature of these things, how these things really exist, and so we imbue them with a type of existence that they don't have. And then, of course, we want the ones that seem to be inherently wonderful and have happiness inside of them, and we want to get rid of the ones that seem to be inherently ugly and have unhappiness inside of them. And then, you know, our whole push-pull with the world begins. And that's kind of the story of our life, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, just so much, you know, always relating externally to things. Okay, so that's form. Then the second type of functional things is consciousness. So here, consciousness is divided into primary minds and to mental factors. And even kitties have primary minds and mental factors. Okay. So the primary mind is... there's 6 kinds of primary mind. Yeah, the visual, the auditory, the olfactory, the gustatory, the tactile, and the mental. Okay, so the primary minds, they know what kind of type of object. Each kind of mind is specific for a certain kind of object. Visual consciousness knows colors. The auditory one knows sounds. Okay, so all of them have their own specific objects, and that's just like the general field. You know, the primary minds know the general field. The mental factors, yeah, occur simultaneous with the primary minds, but they fill out the whole cognition. Okay, and the mental factors have very specific functions that really make the cognitions what they are. Okay, so the mental factors, you can have more than one mental factor occurring with a primary mind. In fact, there's 5 of them that are omnipresent with every kind of mind. And then there's all sorts of other ones that come, and they all have the same object. They exist at the same time. You know, if one is virtuous, all of them are virtuous. If one is non-virtuous, they're all become non-virtuous, and so on. Okay. So, in terms of the mental factors, there's 6 groups that we divide the mental factors in. So those 6 groups are the 5 omnipresent mental factors, the 5 object ascertaining mental factors, the 11 virtuous mental factors, the 6 root afflictions, the 20 secondary or auxiliary afflictions, and the 4 changeable mental factors. Okay, so I'll just go through these very, very quickly to give you just kind of some idea, because it's very helpful. There's lots of tapes about, because I've taught the mind and mental factors in more depth before, so there's lots of tapes, and some of them may even be transcribed, so they're either on the web or in our tape library. You can look things up. Okay, so the 5 omnipresent mental factors, one is feeling. So every cognition, you have a feeling of pleasure, pain, or neutral. A second one is discrimination, and that is the mental factor that discerns, the different qualities of things. Then intention, and this is the mind that the mental factor that directs the mind. And this is the mental factor that is karma. Okay, intention. When we talk about karma, it's that mental factor of intention. For mental karma, physical karma, the Prasangikas say that, it's your body in a certain position or the sound of your voice or whatever. Okay, but that one of intention is very, very crucial. Then contact is another one. So contact is what brings the organ and the object and the preceding moment of consciousness together to produce the new moment of consciousness. Okay, so that's contact. And then attention. So attention also helps to direct the mind to an object. Yeah, we have to pay attention to the object. So those are the 5 omnipresent ones that happen with every cognition that we have, whether it's sensory or mental or whatever. Then the 5 object ascertaining mental factors, so they help us ascertain different qualities of the objects. So one is aspiration, that's a liking for an object. Another one is going towards an object. Another one is belief, kind of what you believe in. Then mindfulness, which is a mental factor that remembers. Mindfulness can also be, the term can also be translated as memory. Okay? So mindfulness is what remembers the object. Yeah? Attention puts the mind on the object. Mindfulness remembers the object. Okay, so if you're meditating, you need mindfulness on whatever your object is, what you're focusing on. When you're practicing ethical conduct, you need mindfulness of your precepts, so that you know what you're, how you want to be. Then another object ascertaining mental factor is concentration. So you see, we have concentration already. It's a mental factor in our mind. It's vastly underdeveloped. But it's not non-existent. Okay, it's important to remember these things, because sometimes we think, well, I'm just bereft of this mental faculty altogether, and that's not true. Okay, yeah, we have mindfulness already, we have concentration, and then the next one is intelligence, or it's sometimes translated as wisdom. So some of our, and it doesn't necessarily mean high IQs and things like that. So some intelligence or some wisdom comes with us from previous life, but then also there's the 3 kinds of intelligence or wisdom or understanding that we develop this life. So the one that arises from hearing the teachings, from reflecting on the teachings, and from meditating on the teachings. So those 3, so those are kinds of intelligence or wisdom that can be developed in this lifetime. I also, before I go on to the next category, it might be helpful to know that because they say that there's 84,000 mental factors, so this list of 51 is a compact version. Yeah, and but it's also selecting those mental factors that it's very important for us to be aware of in terms of attaining liberation. Okay, so these are the most important ones that we either need to be aware of because we need to cultivate them, or to be aware of because they're virtuous, we want to cultivate them, or to be aware of because they're non-virtuous and we want to abstain from them, or because ones like feeling really dominate our own experience. Discrimination is so important, intention is so important. So these things are so important in terms of how our mind functions. So they identify all of these. So this isn't the complete list of mental factors. What is very interesting is that there's some mental factors here that, some mental factors in the West we consider very, very important that are not found here. And there's some things that are considered mental factors in the West that maybe aren't considered mental factors in this list. And this is where the dialogue between science and Buddhism gets interesting because, for example, I remember friendliness from when the scientists list different mental states. Friendliness is a mental state. It sounds like it could be a mental factor, couldn't it? Yeah, mental factor, friendliness. It's not found anywhere in this list. Yeah, not listed like that. Fear is a big one. It's not in this list. Anxiety, worry. Yeah, they aren't in this list. It doesn't mean that these things don't exist. Okay, they certainly exist. But we may ask, well, why aren't these things pinpointed as mental factors if they're that important in terms of, our spiritual practice and our attaining liberation? Shouldn't they be pointed out? Well, I don't know. First of all, some of my personal thoughts on this is that, maybe anxiety is something that is felt more nowadays than it was 2,600 years ago. I mean, I'm sure people felt anxious then, but I don't know that they felt anxious to the same degree that we do now, or maybe they just didn't talk about it as much, or maybe our fast-moving world just produces more anxiety. I don't know. I'm sure people then had anxiety. Yeah. But maybe different kinds, different varieties. His Holiness always stresses that we're all the same human beings, so we shouldn't talk about, people from different cultures having different kinds of minds. Yeah, but I think that, we can say that everybody has the same mental factors, but maybe at certain periods in history or in certain cultures or certain times, different ones may come more strongly. Maybe something like that. Okay? And also when we're going through these mental factors, you'll notice, I haven't gone through all of them, that some of them are emotions, what we would call emotions, and some of them are views, and some of them are attitudes, and some of them, like discrimination. What category would you put that into? It's the one that can tell gray from white to green. It's not an emotion, it's not an attitude, it's not a view. Okay, so what I'm getting at is our Western categories and our Western concepts, you can't make them a one-to-one match with these kinds of things. Okay? And especially when we talk about liberation, there's certain attitudes and views and emotions that we want to cultivate, and certain attitudes, views, and emotions we want to discard. So sometimes we say disturbing attitudes, but anger isn't really an attitude. Yeah, it's more of an emotion. But then people think, oh, all emotions are bad. But I remember at one Mind Life conference there was a big discussion, and they concluded, yes, the Buddha has emotions. Okay? So, we shouldn't just get into things like, oh, somebody's so emotional, as if emotions were all bad. Love and compassion are emotions, aren't they? So the Buddha has them. Okay. Then we have the 11 virtuous mental factors, okay? So these are ones that we want to cultivate. So the first one is faith or confidence or trust. There's very different ways that you want to try. So this is a mind that sees the good qualities and has a joyful feeling that's attracted and trusts and faith. Then the second one is integrity. So this is a sense of our own personal integrity, abandoning negative actions because we respect ourselves. The third one is consideration for others, and this is abandoning negative actions out of concern for how our behavior will affect other people and not wanting to harm them. Then non-attachment. Okay, you might go, non-attachment? What's non-attachment? Does it just mean being a blob? No, non-attachment is a mind that is the opposite of attachment. It sees the faults of attachment, or based on seeing the faults of attachment, it restrains the mind from attachment. So it sees things in a much more realistic way. Then non-hatred. So again, it's not just the absence of hatred, but non-hatred could also be, it could be the mental factor of love. The opposite of that, okay? Attachment, in a way, could be the mental factor of renunciation, giving up attachment to samsaric things. Non-ignorance is a virtuous mental factor, so that's going to be similar to wisdom. Then effort and pliancy. Pliancy is a mental factor that we develop in developing serenity. So it's very important because it is what makes the body and mind serviceable and able to, direct the mind on any virtuous object we want. Conscientiousness is a mind that values what is virtuous. Yeah, it's one of the 11. Equanimity. Okay, so equanimity is this open-hearted concern for everybody. And then non-harmfulness, ahimsa, which is basically compassion. Okay, so those are the 11 virtuous ones. Clearly there's many more than those 11. Okay, then we have the 6 root afflictions. So here we have attachment, so the mind that exaggerates the good qualities of someone or something and clings to it. Anger, the one based on exaggerating the negative qualities and having aversion. Pride, so that's a puffed up mind, yeah, or arrogance or conceit. Yeah, those are all the same thing here. Ignorance, so ignorance, okay, for some of the Buddhist schools, it's just like an obscuration of the mind that prevents you from knowing things. But for the Prasangikas, ignorance actively misapprehends things. So it's not just an obscuration that doesn't know, but it perceives things in the opposite way from how they actually exist. So the ignorance is the self-grasping. Okay, and then deluded doubt. And the reason it says deluded doubt is because there's 3 kinds of doubt. There's the doubt that is, well, I'm not sure if enlightenment's possible, but I think so. So that doubt is going towards the positive side. So that's not the one we're talking about here. Then there's the doubt that maybe enlightenment's possible, maybe it's not, I'm not sure. So that's the middle kind of doubt. The deluded doubt is, I really don't think it's possible. You haven't made your mind up, but you're inclined towards the wrong decision. That's the deluded doubt. And doubt, especially the deluded kind, becomes a big obstacle in our practice because we're not sure about anything, so we can't go forward, and we're, veering towards wrong views, so, the mind gets quite confused. And then there's the sixth one is called afflicted views. And there's 5 kinds of afflicted views. Okay, so one is the view of the personal identity. So this is the grasping at the inherent existence of ourself, of I and mine. Then extreme views, which is based on the view of the personal identity, and says that that truly existent self either is eternal and continues after death, or it becomes totally non-existent after death. So that's why it's called extreme views of absolutism and nihilism. Then, then wrong views. And so this is like, karma doesn't exist, enlightenment doesn't exist, people are inherently selfish, these kinds of wrong views. And then the fourth afflicted view is seeing those 3 previous afflicted views as the best views to have. So it's called supreme, holding wrong views as supreme. So we can get pretty proud of all of our wrong views. Okay, and then the last one is holding bad ethics and modes of conduct as supreme. And what this means is we think that things that aren't virtuous are virtuous, or that things that don't lead to liberation do lead to liberation. So there's examples at the time of the Buddha of people who they thought that if you act like a dog, you purify your karma to be born as a dog. So you had these ascetics who would go around acting like dogs. There's in the Pali Canon, it's amazing. There's suttas in which these people come and visit the Buddha, and they curl up just in the dirt, just like a dog does, because they have this wrong view that that's the path to liberation. Propitiating an external god would be this kind of thing. You have to please an external god or you're going to get punished. Or animal sacrifice. Or they had ones in India that if you jumped on a trident and the center point came out the crown of your head, then you were attained liberation. Or, there's all sorts of, what people say is the path to liberation that is not the path to liberation. I don't know in certain New Age things, if you sit in certain pretzel positions maybe, or people have all sorts of strange views about what is ethical and unethical and what is spiritual practice and what isn't. What's interesting is in the Pali tradition, the term is the same. They define it a little bit different. And they call it something like attachment to rites and rituals. So the idea being that, I think that if you see the two, they can come together. But they talk about it as if you see like doing a ritual just for the sake of doing the ritual. Because some of the Brahmins thought like that, and that would certainly fit in here, isn't it? Because thinking that you do this certain ritual and it's going to bring you enlightenment or it's going to purify your karma or whatever, when it's not actually the ritual and doing the ritual in this extremely technical way that's important. It's what's going on in your mind that's important. Okay, or just getting it attached to your kind of, your views and opinions about what the path is, and attached to ceremonies and rites and things like that. What's very interesting about it is that we always think other people's ceremonies and rites are the ones that this mental factor is talking about. Those other people are attached to doing ceremonies and rituals, but I'm not attached to ceremonies and rituals. Or our ceremonies and rituals are the right ones, but their ones are the wrong ones. Okay, whereas I don't think it's, you know, I mean, of course it includes that kind of which rituals kind of lead to what kind of result. But it also is, you know, what is our attitude when we're doing a ritual? Are we trying to transform our mind, or are we just saying, you know, I'm just doing it for the sake of doing it, kind of in a superstitious way, you know? And there is a certain degree of this, you know? There is a degree of this. Even in, you know, amongst Buddhists, we do all sorts of, you know, funny things sometimes. Yeah. And I think it's like left over maybe from Brahmanism. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so those five are the five afflicted views. And the afflicted views is the sixth of the 6 root afflictions. Those are called root afflictions because they, you know, are the root of samsara. You know, and because all the other afflictions kind of stem from them. Okay, they're the really dominant ones. They're the like main categories. And when we get into the secondary afflictions, you can see that certain secondary afflictions, you know, are more affiliated with attachment, certain with anger, certain with pride or with ignorance or like that. Okay? So then the secondary afflictions, wrath. Yeah. So you're super angry and want to do harm. Resentment. Yeah. Something happened and you're resenting the other person. Resentment, you know, is leading us in the direction of holding a grudge, isn't it? Yeah. Because resentment, you're holding on to something there. Wrath, you're more explosion. Concealment. You conceal your negativities. You don't tell anybody. Okay? Spite. So this is more a verbal one where we want to cause harm. Jealousy, where we think that we begrudge somebody else their happiness. We want somebody to be miserable. Okay? Miserliness. We want to keep things for ourselves. Pretension. Pretending that we have good qualities that we don't have. Dishonesty or dissimulation is pretending we don't have negative qualities that we do have. Okay, these two are very active when you go applying for a job. Yeah? In fact, that's what you're expected to do, isn't it? Hide your faults and invent qualities that you don't have. And sell yourself. Okay? Complacency is, you know, being kind of negligent, complacent, not caring about karma, not caring about our practice. Harmfulness, wanting to inflict harm. Non-integrity, so this is the opposite of the integrity that was the virtuous one. Yeah, because the virtuous integrity abandon negative actions because of our a sense of our own self-respect and a sense of our own ethics. Non-integrity, we don't care about that. You know, we'll just do anything. Yeah, inconsideration for others, that's also the opposite of consideration for others. So we don't care about the effects of our actions on other people. We don't restrain ourselves out of care for other people. Dullness, so this is a very dull mind in meditation that's leading you towards sleep. Excitement, so this is a mind that is affiliated with attachment, and especially when we're meditating, we, you know, attach, the excitement is the mind that like wants to go to some kind of tantalizing object to daydream. Okay, laziness is of 3 types. The laziness of procrastination, the laziness of being too busy doing worldly things, and discouragement. Yeah, so discouragement is a form of laziness. Non-faith or non-confidence, again, the opposite of the virtuous one of faith or confidence or trust. So it's just like a disbelief. Non-conscientiousness is not caring at all about our ethical conduct. Forgetfulness is the opposite of mindfulness. Forget the object of meditation, forget our precepts. Non-introspective awareness. So it's interesting, the mental factor of introspective awareness, samprajana, or clear knowing, that one isn't listed in, but they do list the non-introspective awareness. So you can see that the introspective awareness exists, but the non-one is like, you're out to lunch. There's no, paying attention to what you're doing or saying or thinking or feeling. And then distraction. Yeah. Okay, so those are the 20 secondary ones. And then, okay, then maybe we'll stop there and we'll carry on with the changeable mental factors next time. Maybe if you have any questions, we have time for a couple questions. Yeah?
Earlier when you were talking about impermanent phenomena, why do they say, or is there a reason for sometimes saying things arise, abide, cease, or sometimes they say arise, abide, aging, and disintegration? Is there any difference in those?
No. And sometimes they just say arise and cease. They don't even put abide in there. Yeah.
So back to clarify this non-occasional permanent object, and it lists emptiness, but prior to that, you learned emptiness has to have this object. So is there, emptiness requires an existent object?
No, whenever we talk about emptiness, there has to be a phenomena that is empty of true existence.
Right.
That's all we're saying.
Okay.
Yeah, so when we talk about just emptiness in general is a non-occasional permanent, because there it's just being empty. The lack of true existence is permanent, okay? Within that lack of true existence, there's the emptiness of the telephone and the emptiness of the tape recorder and the emptiness of you, and okay?
And that lack is the non-occasional permanent.
The emptiness is a generality, is non-occasional. Yeah, just talking about emptiness in general. But the emptiness of the cup is an occasional permanent because it exists only as long as the cup exists. Okay. Okay. The cup, does it exist forever?
No.
Okay. Does the attributes of the cup, the color of the cup, does it exist forever? Does the shape of the cup exist forever? Okay. Does the emptiness of the cup exist forever?
Not when the cup ceases.
Yeah.
So that's
the emptiness of the cup exists as long as the cup exists.
right.
When the cup ceases, the emptiness of the cup ceases. Emptiness in general does not cease. The emptiness of the cup ceases when the cup ceases.
Yeah, I think as soon as the phrase emptiness in general comes, my mind makes that something solid.
Yeah. Don't make it so. It's like the difference between color and yellow.
Okay.
Color is the general category, yellow is the specific thing.
Okay,
That's an example of it. Okay?
You said dreams are not the nature of the mind. Does that mean like they're saying dreams are an obscuration from the mind? As opposed to the clear and knowing nature of the mind?
Well, again, the Chitta Mantras say that dreams are the nature of the mind, in that a karmic latency produced both the dream object and the mind that's dreaming. The Prasangikas say that the dream object is not the nature of the mind, it's some kind of object, yeah. But is it obscuring the mind? I think it depends what kind of dreams you're having. Yeah, well, most of our dreams are rubbish. Yeah, so those dreams, I think, surely are just kind of obscuring the mind. I think when you know, they talk about really accomplished practitioners, then they, you know, they can practice dream yoga. They can get certain information from dreams and so on, but you know, that depends on somebody's level of mind and how they practice. Yeah?
Well, just to see if I've got this. So, afflicted mental states are in the category of non-existent.
The afflicted mental states exist, don't they? Anger exists.
Yeah.
Attachment exists.
Yeah.
The object that afflicted mental state is apprehending, that supercalifragilisticexpialidocious Buddha boy, is non-existent.
So the elaboration.
It's what, okay, there's a blue book here. If I'm seeing a yellow book, I'm adding something to this book that's not there. Does a yellow book exist here? No. That yellow book is a non-existent. Here, because this is a blue book. Okay? So, you know, the person, you know, some guy that there is, he exists. But the person that you're thinking he is does not exist. Got it? Okay. Anything else? Okay, let's dedicate then.